Georgia became the first program in a decade to win back-to-back national championships, and Kirby Smart again starts spring ball with a new coordinator and one of the most interesting quarterback competitions in the country. Let's bring on coaching insider Jesse Simonton of On3 to discuss his recent article on the Dogs QB battle. Jesse, you made a great point in the article when you wrote, quote, "For a team as loaded as Georgia, it could be a decision that kickstarts a potential dynasty or opens the runway for another program to win a championship if Smart and company roll with the wrong guy." So, Jesse, big decision coming up for Kirby Smart. I know we're way early in this, but who's your early front runner to win the QB job at UGA?
Well, I think entering the spring, the prohibitive favorite is Carson Beck. He was the guy that served as Stetson Bennett's backup a year ago. He played well in kind of mop-up duty. He's been biding his time. You know, The Athletic did a story earlier this offseason that looked back at the last 4 or 5 recruiting classes of the top 50 quarterbacks in the country. Carson Beck is the only one that has both never started a game and is yet to transfer. And this is kind of a make-or-break spring for him. So obviously, I think he is the front runner for sure. But the two guys behind him, they're nipping at his heels, and they have a lot of talent too.
All right, let's take a look at where these QBs ranked coming out of high school. You had 5-star Brock Vandagriff is a 97.23. He was the highest rated recruit coming out of high school of the bunch. Gunner Stockton there at 93.11 and Carson Beck at 91.28, rounding out the 3.
Brock Vandagriff, folks forget this, but Lincoln Riley originally picked Brock Vandagriff over Caleb Williams, the reigning Heisman Trophy winner out of high school, couple recruiting cycles ago. He had Vandagriff committed to Oklahoma. Brock from Georgia, small school, not that far away in Athens, coached by his dad, ultimately opted to stay closer to home so his family, who born and raised in Tennessee, could come watch him play. So that's, that speaks to his chops that a guy like Lincoln Riley thought that highly of him. Gunner Stockton has set all sorts of records in the high school state of Georgia. And then again, Carson Beck played really well in Florida. And so that's 3 talented guys, all with the prep accolades. And now they're trying to become the guy who can be the guy for the potential 3-time national champs.
Jesse, do you think that Kirby could have found a better option at quarterback in the transfer portal this offseason?
I don't, because I think the Georgia staff is very confident in these guys that they have recruited. Again, we just went over their recruiting background, but I also think they believe strongly in kind of the system that they have in place. The fact that all 3 of these guys were on the roster a year ago. Yes, Georgia does have a coordinator change between Todd Monken to Mike Bobo, but the verbiage is not expected to change. The terminology is not expected to change. And so when you're running effectively the same system, having 3 guys who have already been in the building and aren't having to relearn an entire playbook, I think that's beneficial, especially when you take into context the rest of the talent that's going to surround these quarterbacks with the Brock Bowers, the Arian Smiths, the 2 big transfers that they got out of the portal. Missouri's top wide receiver, Dominique Lovett, Ra Thomas from Mississippi State. So, I mean, that's some real talent around all these quarterbacks. So dipping into the portal seemed almost unnecessary for Georgia this cycle.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense. If you're Georgia, maybe you want some continuity in there. You know, you're bringing in new coordinators, you're bringing in new wide receivers. You got a whole new offense, basically. And now, you don't want to really mess with the quarterback spot. I get that. So former Georgia All-American David Pollock recently on On3's The Hard Count said this: "I think it's Carson Beck's job to lose 100%. Do you think that he says this mainly due to Carson Beck's experience? Does that make him the odds-on favorite here?"
Well, I mean, Pollock has a lot of sources inside the Georgia building, and he's around that program a lot. So I think when he speaks with, real legitimacy and has, real backing to what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is Carson Beck's job to lose. That does not mean, though, ergo, that Carson Beck is guaranteed to win the job. As I noted in my piece, he's had this opportunity to be Georgia's starting quarterback before, and he whiffed on it. And so That was when the Stetson Bennett Hollywood script never gets written if Carson Beck actually starts against UAB 2 years ago, but he played or performed poorly in practice that week. Bennett was basically forced to be the guy. And the greatest, comeback or walk-on story that we've ever seen gets told. Beck doesn't face, that sort of situation behind him now. But again, Vandagriff and Stockton are very capable. Smart isn't going to make a decision this spring, so this is going to drag into the fall. So it's going to be up to Carson Beck to perform each and every day for these 15 practices in the spring and then throughout the offseason teamwork to really take a stranglehold of the job.
Yeah, the story of Stetson Bennett's walk-on to back-to-back national championship winner is amazing. So how does that play into Kirby Smart's decision as he evaluates his next potential starter? Do you think he cares at all about the star power of when these guys came to campus?
I don't know if he cares about the quote-unquote star power in terms of where they were ranked individually, but I do think Kirby Smart has shown, especially with what, the reins that he gave to Todd Monken as the OC, to continue to kind of evolve and develop the offense where it is more explosive. He understands you need one of these, fighter pilots, one of these top flight jet guys who kind of, can go out and win you a game at quarterback. Stetson Bennett ultimately proved he could be that guy for Georgia. Kirby Smart's a guy who's recruited the best. I mean, he signed 5-star Jacob Eason. He signed 5-star Justin Fields. Jake Fromm was a friend 4-5-star quarterback. And so he understands talent. Now he's letting those guys really rip it. At least that's what he did with Stetson Bennett. And I think the expectation is that's just how the offense is going to be now at Georgia. So may the best man win. All these guys have, again, the credentials in terms of their ratings out of high school. Now we'll see how they can put it together, surrounded by Georgia's talent, in college.
Yeah, may the best man win. But in this day and age of the transfer portal, we've got to think that at least one of these QBs could leave if they don't win the job. Who do you think would have the most value on the open market if they do decide to transfer after spring?
It's a very layered and complicated question, but I do think it's a fascinating one to kind of explore because Stockton would obviously have the most availability in terms of years to play. Vandagriff was the highest ranked guy. Beck, though, would probably be seen as a plug-and-play guy for some systems because he has been waiting in the wings for so long. No matter who, I think, ultimately kind of misses out, so to speak, in the QB Derby for Georgia, that guy's going to be a coveted quarterback on the market. And then that's why Georgia so desperately wants all three of these guys back because they're not bringing in a freshman in the 2023 class. So if they ultimately lose a guy, whether it's in May or later, then I think Georgia's going to have to go into the portal and get, a veteran depth piece.
Yeah, good point.
Somebody to come mentor a guy just because you don't want to enter the season with just two scholarship quarterbacks in your 85-man roster.
Yeah, great point. What do you think the key is to winning the QB job for Georgia in 2023?
I think it's showcasing an ability to continue to elevate the offense. That's ultimately what Stetson was able to do. It's how he differentiated himself from JT Daniels. He was not just a guy that, Georgia said, we'll hold your hand and walk you through it. They did originally, but as we saw in the 2 college football playoff games in 2021, they let it rip, and Georgia put up huge points. And then this season, they continued to kind of be aggressive in terms of their downfield attack. They were one of the most explosive offenses in the country in terms of passing yards per play, downfield, big plays. And again, they're loaded with skill talent. And so they need a guy, they need a trigger man who's going to get these guys the ball and elevate the players around them.
Yep. All right, Jesse, thanks for coming on Coach's Corner to talk about this UGA battle that we'll be watching through the spring, into the summer, and most likely fall camp before we get a final answer on who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Dogs. Thanks, Jesse.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you for watching. Make sure you smash that subscribe button for me, and remember to check out all the videos on the On3 YouTube page.